Production of Kansas City Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Getting fighting fit on the eve of taking a stressful new job, Inauguration Day Monday, for Missouri's next governor. Will it be his last State of the State address on Tuesday? Speculation still swirling over Sam Brownback joining the Trump team. As lawmakers in Missouri are back at it and Kansas lawmakers return to Topeka next week, we zero in on the issues most likely to affect you and your pocketbook. And here in KC, petitioners handing in the signatures calling for a citywide vote on any streetcar expansion. Hello, I'm Nick Haynes, wishing you joy and contentment as we start this brand spanking new year together with a long holiday break behind us. Lots to cover this week. Jim McLean tracks Kansas legislative developments for the Kansas News Service in Topeka. Mike Ferguson hosts the syndicated Missouri state politics program Missouri Viewpoints and tackles local and regional issues 4 to 6 weekdays on KCMO Talk Radio. Barbara Shelley is contributing writer for The Pitch and from the pages of your Kansas City Star, Dave Helling. On Monday, a Navy SEAL and political outsider becomes the new governor of Missouri as Eric Greitens is inaugurated into office in Jefferson City. This week, he was getting fighting fit for the job, working out with members of the Kansas City Police Department. Dave Helling, you were there, though I didn't see you doing any push-ups in the video.
Right, and they didn't ask us, and I'm a little upset about that, actually. I was quite prepared to do 50 or 60 push-ups in 1 minute. Not.
I didn't see certainly Sam Brownback doing working out, say, with the Topeka Police Department before he ever took office, or Sly James working out with the police department before he took office. So this is a little different.
Right, and it was largely a photo op, Nick, but it had a purpose. And I think it's becoming pretty clear before Governor-elect Greitens takes the oath on Monday that law enforcement and support for law enforcement, if you will be a major theme probably of his address, certainly of State of the State. I've talked to people that were working a little bit on a story about how the new governor will interact with the two major metropolitan areas, St. Louis and Kansas City. And what the Greitens people are telling me is, look, he's not as interested in TIFs and money and projects as he is helping the police, getting crime down in both cities. And that's really going to be a focus for his first year in the new administration. And I think that's what we saw this week.
Now, we know that the governor-elect can certainly do lots of push-ups and he can do squat thrusts, Mike. But what else do we know about this new governor-elect before he takes office and the kind of governor he is going to be?
Well, you forgot he can shoot big guns.
Yes.
But the other thing is that you've got a great photo op. Dave's completely right about that. You've got a rookie. And you've got a Republican legislature that I think is going to protect him. And I think what we're going to see is a very well choreographed legislative session. Some of the most controversial issues, religious freedom versus gay rights, for instance, they're not putting that on the table this year because Eric Greitens disagrees with the Republican majorities on that. So I think what you're going to see is the first term, Eric Greitens, frankly, being propped up by Republican legislators who need him to be a strong governor and need to back up everything they complained about Jay Nixon for the last year by saying, look, give us control, keep us in control, and we're going to get things done.
A lot of people making comparisons between the Eric Greitens in Missouri and Donald Trump nationally. I mean, both of them political outsiders, never held elected office before.
Yeah, and I think that's a little overstated. I think Eric Greitens has gone about the transition in a methodical, quiet way, and has not been anywhere near as reckless as Donald Trump has been. I do disagree with Mike a little bit that the Republicans are going to, make sure Eric Greitens has a first great session. He's not one of theirs. He's an outsider, and he came in, most of the legislators supported somebody else for governor. They had that big Republican primary. And, Eric Greitens actually, criticized a lot of, during his campaign, a lot of things that the legislators hold dear.
So will that make it difficult for him to get that job done, even though everyone is a Republican in leadership positions?
I think if it's not a mission-critical issue, I think you're going to see it on the back burner, maybe fight about it at the end, but I think they're going to focus on the things that everybody's on board with, right to work, some ethics reform, things like that. I think they do not want to cripple him very early on, so I don't think they're going to talk about the stuff they disagree with right away.
Can I just say quickly, I think that Mike is right, except on maybe ethics reform, which I think may be an early place where there will be some disagreement, in part because I think Governor-elect Greitens wants to go farther than a lot of members of the legislature want to go. One of his proposals, for example, is what's called the one-for-one rule. If you serve 8 years in the legislature, you have to wait 8 years before you can lobby. That actually makes a great deal of sense. It will get nowhere with the legislature.
Totally DOA.
So those kinds of pushing and shoving instances may take place on ethics reform.
Well, as an outsider to Missouri politics, just a general political observation, I think the legislature might be doing Greitens a favor if they took a fight or two with him so he can preserve that outsider status, which obviously was beneficial to him in the campaign, certainly beneficial to President-elect Trump. So maybe if they're not completely on the same page, not necessarily a bad thing.
So on Monday, Missouri gets a new governor. On Tuesday evening, Jim, Kansas Governor Sam Brownback is scheduled to deliver what could be his last State of the State address. I say last because there's still speculation he will depart the state to join the new Trump administration. There's been very little news on that for a while. Has he been eliminated from consideration?
I don't think so. I mean, every time we get a chance to talk to the governor, he's asked the same question and he gives the same answer, which is, I'm just not going to talk about it. And you ask him, have you had any contact with him? He just won't go there. On the other hand, there have been plenty of stories about Lieutenant Governor Jeff Collier kind of stepping up his game, so to speak, and getting certainly more involved in legislative discussions and budget discussions and so forth. So that alone kind of gives the appearance that maybe he's prepping for the top job. But it's been, that speculation has been out there for a long time, and certainly there's no real evidence yet that he's on the move.
Has that boat now sailed, Barbara?
Oh, I think the job of agricultural secretary is still out there, so maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But, Brownback, he has to give a state of the state address, and that's going to be very interesting. I'll say last year he spent a lot of time, worrying about the Obama administration and Syrian refugees and never mentioned the state budget crisis in his State of the State address. So
that just shows his compassion.
I guess.
Okay.
I'm going to be watching to see what he's going to say in that address.
The
on
rumors
Tuesday.
you hear aren't about Ag Secretary. The rumors you hear some sort of an ambassadorship or something like that, at least lately.
Now, you actually talked about this being one of the most over-reported stories in our last Year in Review program, Dave, about the speculation about Governor Brownback going to Washington.
Not just Brownback, but Chris Kobach leaving. If it's going to happen, it'll happen. If it doesn't happen, it won't happen. At one time, the Star had like 9 reporters chasing rumors about Sam Brownback, including our Washington bureau, which was about 8.5 too many, I guess. But I think we should keep in mind, Nick, that while the State of the State address is next Tuesday, the more important thing to watch will be the budget submission from the governor and his office, because right out of the bat, the legislature seems poised to try and tackle some of these budgetary problems, both for the remainder of this fiscal year and for the next. And so whatever marker he lays down will be important to judge how the legislature does its work. I get the sense, Jim may disagree, but I get the sense that in some ways the governor is almost a non-entity in those discussions, that the legislators are now talking amongst themselves, and whatever he proposes will be considered briefly, set aside, and they'll approach their own solution.
I don't disagree with you at all. And I think the governor's actually encouraged that. You talk to the governor a lot. He says, let's wait and see what the legislature gives me or brings to me on any number of things, including the big school finance debate. So, and frankly, to be very honest about it, you hear a lot of legislators, including Republicans, I don't think they wish the governor any ill will personally, but I think they would just as soon he not be governor any longer, because he is so tied to his economic plan and his tax cuts that they've had a hard time negotiating with him on the things that now more and more legislators believe need to be done to solve the state's fiscal problems.
And just to finish that thought, in that sense, whether he goes to join the Trump administration or not is really irrelevant. He is almost, in his final 2 years, a non-entity in Kansas government. It will be a legislature-driven decision-making process going forward.
We will drill down on the legislation in just a moment, but you did mention Chris Kobach, the Kansas Secretary of State. Again, he's the other person rumored for weeks to be departing for Washington. Though a front-page story in today's Kansas City Star suggests that enthusiasm for a tough line on immigration joining the Trump team has chilled. So is there a slot for Kobach or not now?
Well, I think there is more pressure, as we've said before, there is more pressure from outside groups supporting Kobach than there is for Sam Brownback at all. There are some anti-immigrant public policy groups who are pushing pretty hard for Chris Kobach, kind of as a litmus test to show the Trump administration's commitment to this strong anti-immigrant stance. And there's a lot of chatter, as you know, about the wall today and who's going to pay for it and when it will be built. So in that sense, I think the pressure to hire someone like Chris Kobach continues. Now, whether, again, it's a little like Sam Brownback, Nick. It's gone on for so long, the bloom is off the rose a little bit. If they wanted Chris Kobach, they could have had him 6 weeks ago. The fact that they haven't picked him suggests there's real hesitation among the Trump transition team.
Barbara.
Yeah, and you hear, well, maybe spot in the Justice Department, but I don't think Chris Kobach is going to be content to be a backbencher in the Justice Department. He likes to be front and center. And so now there's talk that possibly he could be an immigration czar and sort of coordinate between agencies and all. And then he could skirt a Senate confirmation hearing, which might be tricky for him.
This article in the Star Today front page, Jim McLean, also suggests, though, that he is also interested in becoming the next governor of Kansas, or wouldn't necessarily want to go to Washington.
Well, you've heard that. We've heard that for years. And frankly, a story could be done today. There are several people who are already essentially running to succeed Sam Brownback as governor. Collier, if he should step up, I don't know what his plans would be, but Lynn Jenkins, is the congresswoman from the 2nd District, has said she's interested. And several other people now are Paul Davis is running again. There's some talk about Dwayne Gosen, the former budget director, running on the Democratic ticket. Ed O'Malley, a former legislator in the Leadership Center, he's running. And Jim Barnett, who ran against Kathleen Sebelius many years ago, the former state senator, he's running. So I don't know, frankly, I honestly don't know why so many people want this job, because it's going to be a terribly hard job for the next 4, 5, 6, maybe more years. And nevertheless, people are seemingly lining up to get it. But nobody really knows what Kobach's desires are, because if you're going to be governor of Kansas, there's real work to do.
Well, as lawmakers on both sides of state line get back to business, why should we care? Well, fill in this blank for us, starting in the Show Me State, Mike Ferguson. The number one issue facing lawmakers as they return to Jefferson City this week is blank.
They are going to tell you right to work. I'm going to say it's going to be more of a budget shortfall problem than what a lot of Republicans are willing to admit right now. We've heard withholdings, which they've questioned, sometimes rightly, Governor Nixon's withholdings and from some of the budget aspects. But when it comes to long-term, particularly when it involves things like tax credits and other incentives like that, I think you're going to see a bigger, and we should see a bigger discussion on where the long-term budget comes from, because that's going to affect
everything. This is interesting because you hear a lot about the budget problems in Kansas. You've heard much, much less about the budget problems in Missouri.
And they're not as bad as they are in Kansas. But I think right now, when they're looking at the long-term revenues, I think there is a tremendous amount of pressure, especially for tax incentives and tax credits. Everybody says it needs to be reformed, but nobody wants the tax credit in their district touched. And that's why they haven't been able to get anything done the last few years. So whether or not that's the headlines or not, I think that's the most contentious issue they're going to have to deal with.
The number one issue for you, Barbara Shelley, was what?
Well, they're going to say it's right to work. I'd like to see them do something with the roads.
But will they actually do something with regards to roads, though?
Well, this year I doubt it because of the budget situation. Sooner or later they're going to have to put some kind of tax increase on the ballot, and I don't think this is the year they're going to come up with a blueprint for that.
But if there's a big federal initiative, as Trump has been talking about, that could be a jumping off point for a road program in any state.
Right. It would take some, this would be a place, for example, where Eric Greitens could invest a lot of political capital. If he came out in essence and said, hey, it's my first year, I've driven every road in Missouri and I realize now they're full of potholes, they need shoulders, the bridges are a mess, then I think the legislature might go along, because I think the lawmakers do have some sense from their constituents that the transportation problem needs to be addressed. But they're not going to take the first step because Missouri remains an anti-tax state. And in the environment in which there will be rescissions and budget cuts, plus pressure for a general tax cut, which is always the case when Republicans control a legislature, it gets scrambled. Eric Greitens is the guy who could bring some clarity to that, whether he does.
What was the number one issue for you then?
Well, I think ethics
legislators.
reform will be a big thing for people to talk about. Education, higher education spending, but also school finance is still an issue in Missouri. We don't hear about it quite as much as we do in the state of Kansas, so I think that'll come up. And then we'll always have guns and abortion in the first 6 weeks, as we do in every legislature.
Well, the first order of business, according to the state's legislative leaders, is a vote to make Missouri a right-to-work state.
Right to work means more freedom and more choices for Missouri workers. Right to work also means more jobs and makes our state a better place to work and raise a family. 25 other states already embrace this good idea and are experiencing more growth in their states.
Something's fishy. Workers in right-to-work states make on average $1,500 less per year than workers in states that allow employees to bargain for fair wages and benefits.
Some of the ads being used to persuade Missouri yay or nay on right to work. Governor Jay Nixon has vetoed these efforts in the past. Now with a Republican in the governor's office, is this a slam dunk? And what does it actually mean to be a right to work state, Mike?
Yes, it's a slam dunk. The real battle, the AFL-CIO has said they want to put the issue on the ballot in a couple of years as well. They know that they are not going to win this. The Republican legislature, Eric Greitens, has said, I will sign it into law. So is it a slam dunk? Yes. What will it change? The Economic Development Department under a Greitens administration and Republican leaders will say it's going to be easier for us to go out and try to recruit that heavy manufacturing, those large-scale, even what are typical union jobs or blue-collar jobs to the state, because they say we're losing them to places like Tennessee and Texas and places like that. So they would argue that it'll be easier to attract large-scale employers into the state.
It's a phrase we hear a lot, but what does right to work really practically do to change things in the state of Missouri?
Well, it depends on which study you're giving credence to. The unions will say that right-to-work states, the wages are depressed vis-a-vis states that don't have these right-to-work laws. Kansas is a right-to-work state, and they evidently felt they needed, these draconian tax cuts to jumpstart the economy. I think, right to work has been something that a lot of Republican legislators have craved for years. There's some big donors, one in particular, that have craved it for years. Is it really going to make a difference? I don't really think it's going to bring jobs into Missouri. And some employers say they want a vigorous union in place. They're great for job training and things like that. So we'll see.
Dave.
Just quickly, we should not pass over this issue without remarking on the astonishing decline of the political influence of labor unions and organized labor. I mean, Missouri has had ballot issues on right to work, and the union households have mobilized and kept Missouri out of the right to work universe, and yet at the ballot box, when it was clearly on the ballot in November, it was a clean Republican sweep across the state. That's largely because organized labor is not nearly the political force it once was, either in Missouri or really in the entire United States.
Let's head to Kansas now. Complete this sentence, Jim. The number one issue facing lawmakers as they return to Topeka next week is blank.
Well, I'm going to give you maybe a bit of a surprise here. I could say the fiscal situation, I could say school finance, I could say any of those things. But I think the number one issue really underlying all of that is whether or not we will see a governing coalition emerge. The conservative Republicans have been in control of the State House lock, stock, and barrel for several years, and that's no longer the case. 56 new legislators, about a third of the legislature are newcomers, and more moderate leadership. The question is, can they forge a governing coalition with the increased number of Democrats and do the things, the heavy lifting that needs to be done to get the state's fiscal situation fixed? I think that's a really, really big question mark as this session convenes.
What did you put down as the answer to that question, Barbara?
In Kansas?
Yes.
To me, the number one issue is something we talked about before, that the shocking casting aside of the governor in any of the plans that are being made. I mean, he's just been sidelined, basically, and I've just never seen that before.
Dave.
I'm watching to see, I'm with Jim. I think the coalition, that whatever that turns out to be, will be fascinating. But I'm also watching to see if there is a global approach to problems in which, nothing is settled unless everything is settled. If it's one huge package on schools, taxes, finance, spending, and the coalition gathers once, or if they break it into pieces in which coalitions can shift, votes can change, amendments can be made, disagreements extend. If they approach it that way, it's going to be a longer session, a more difficult session, and the ultimate outcome may be more difficult for everyone to accept when it's all over. That's my guess.
You know, that's a really good point, Dave. I think you're right. Whether they're going to take a holistic approach, particularly to this budget situation, we have to remember $350 million projected shortfall just this year, but almost $1 billion over the next 2 years. So it's a big job. And a piecemeal approach, you're right, coalitions will shift and votes will change. But I think, I talked to Don Heineman, who's the new majority leader in the Kansas House last week. He's from Dighton, and he's very clearly wanting to take the more holistic approach. He thinks that's really what's going to be needed.
Because you get into school finance versus taxes versus budget cuts in other areas versus Medicaid expansion. It's all intertwined, interlocked in a very difficult way. And if they break it into pieces, those coalitions will shift and disarray.
Okay, Mike Ferguson, did you have a different answer to that question?
Well, I think you've got the pressure to do something. Basically do anything, but the lawmakers are saying we can't mess this up. So there's the question as to, and I think this goes to what Jim was saying, is we can't just do something for the sake of doing something. It's got to be the right decisions moving forward. And of course, what the right decision is, you've got three parties in the state. You've got Democrat, you got conservative, you got moderate Republicans. And so the idea to just act for the sake of acting is something that probably the media will have.
The perceived pressure from the voters is to, quote unquote, fix it. Once and for all, fix it. Not Band-Aid it, not this. Fix it.
And let's just point out that Governor Brownback still has a veto pen. So coalitions make sense, but you may have veto-proof stuff, and so you'll have to have more votes. I mean, it's much more complicated than I think people understand.
Here's an issue that none of you have mentioned thus far, and that's Medicaid expansion. In Kansas, the chair of the House Health Committee announced she would hold hearings on Medicaid expansion. Remember that issue? But has Kansas and Missouri now missed the boat on this with a new presidential administration? Will there even be any matching money offered by Washington to states to expand health care, Jim?
Well, I didn't mention it because I was waiting for you to bring it up.
That's so nice.
You said you're going to.
You did.
No, and I think the obvious answer, the answer that people who are opposed to expansion will say is, yes, we've missed the boat. That ship has sailed to continue the. But I don't think that's true. I don't think anybody knows yet. First of all, there's a poll out just today from the Kaiser Family Foundation that says, yes, people are evenly split still on Obamacare, the ACA, but even those people who want to see it repealed don't want it repealed until the Republicans have a detailed replacement plan in place, which they do not now have, okay? You also have more than 30 states that have expanded their Medicaid programs. They're now benefiting from that 90 whatever match and getting all that federal money. So how do you then level the playing field if all of a sudden you cut things off? I think you're going to see early in the session a big push to pass a Medicaid expansion plan in Kansas, force the governor to deal with it as a way of kind of getting in line for whatever comes next at the federal level.
Barbara.
I don't know about that, because what they've always said, opponents of Medicaid expansion, is, oh, you know, that the federal government, they're not reliable on that match. We can't count on that match. And nothing that's happened over the past 6 months or so is going to cause
And I'm assuming this is a no-starter in Missouri,
to have
Mike.
confidence
I
in
would
that
say
match.
it's going to go very, very, I mean, it seems to get a little baby step farther each year. I mean, the Medicaid expansion proponents have a long-term plan, but yeah, it's not going to happen in Missouri.
It was a deadly end of the year on both sides of state line. 126 homicides tallied in KCMO. KCK recorded a 42% rise in murders. But if you live in Missouri, starting this week, you will no longer need to take safety training or have a criminal background check to carry a concealed weapon. The concealed carry law passed by lawmakers last session is finally now in effect. Its backers claiming it'll help level the playing field for victims against would-be criminals. Critics say it threatens the safety of citizens and law enforcement, but Kansas has had a similar law on the books for the better part of 18 months. What impact has it had there?
I don't think we know. We talked about this before. You know, I don't think we know yet. I don't think we're actually going to know until a period of years have passed and they've been able to do some, you know, reliable studies on it and everything. You know, I just think if you talk to Chief Forte in Kansas City, well, what do you think about, you know, everybody 19 and up being able to go get a gun with no training or a permit or anything? He's not going to be real happy about it.
Well, I think as a matter of personal responsibility, you should still go get training voluntarily. That's something I think is just a matter of responsibility. What we've seen over the years in many other states is that loosening the right to bear arms, loosening your Second Amendment, constitutional carry, whatever you want to call it, does not increase the crime rate at all. We already know the criminals have illegal guns and they don't have them in compliance with the laws.
But does it reduce it?
Well, it did in Florida. That's for sure.
The reality is that these laws have very little effect one way or the other, and they're not about policy. They're about politics. They're a way to raise money, and they're a way to satisfy certain voters. It has really very little to do, Nick, with yes or no.
And in Kansas, the concealed carry law, which I'd mentioned, is going to be expanding soon when a provision goes into effect allowing concealed weapons on all public college campuses in the state. Starting July 1, students and faculty will be able to carry a gun in any campus building unless the university provides adequate security measures, such as metal detectors or security guards, to protect the space. So is there any evidence, because we were told that we're going to have this whole brain drain of faculty departing Kansas universities if this went into effect, is that happening?
Well, there's been a fair amount of pushback on college campuses, K-State, KU in particular, against this. I mean, it's not popular with university faculty and students, and the architect of these laws, Senator Forrest Knox from Altoona, was defeated in the last election. As I mentioned, a third of the legislature are now newcomers, and there is evidence that the people coming in may want to revisit this issue.
So it may not go into effect on July 1?
It may not.
Okay. Now, when Kansas City, by the way, approved the new streetcar line, they only had to get the approval of taxpayers inside the transportation district set up around the track. Now a petition effort underway to require a citywide vote on any expansion of the streetcar line. Now, signatures have been handed in to place this issue on the ballot. Those behind the effort are no big fans of city spending on the streetcar. But if it were put up to a citywide vote, would that kill expansion plans, Dave?
We don't know, because we don't know what the campaign looks like, but mass transit, fixed rail mass transit, is always a difficult sell citywide wherever it's tried, because the beneficiaries are limited to those who are along the line,
Yes.
basically. The rest of the community says, what's in this for me? They don't think anything is there. It's a tough sell.
But people are now seeing it. Does that make a difference in terms of a vote for the city to vote on it?
As Dave said, I don't think we know. We'd have to see what the campaign looks like. You know, possibly that might be a go.
I'll make a prediction. If it goes to a citywide vote, streetcar expansion loses, and loses big. On the streetcars that we have now, basically the city hall picked the voters that they knew would say yes and kept it as narrow as they could.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers, Barbara Shelley and Jim McLean, and to Mike Ferguson and Dave Helling. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.